Well, we're going to talk still about the story of Abraham. And I want to give you a different angle on the story of Abraham. And, here it goes. I'm from a little town called Zoar. Zoar actually means small in my language, because really it is a pretty small town. There's not many of us that live there. And really nothing happens in Zoar. There isn't any shopping, there isn't any marketplace, there isn't really anything to bring you into Zoar. It's just a little town. Which made it very surprising when Lot and his two daughters showed up in Zoar. I'll never forget that day. That morning, early in the morning, the sun was just coming up, and Lot and his two daughters came to Zoar. And the minute they walked into our town, fire and brimstone fell down from heaven and destroyed the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah and the whole plain across the Jordan Valley. It was an amazing, I could tell you all about it. I could tell you what it looked like. I could tell you what it smelled like. I could tell you how it made us all feel to watch the whole plain burn as burning sulfur came down from heaven. But I'm really not here to tell you about the burning sulfur. I want to tell you about Lot and Abraham. If I could write a book and put a title to my book, I would probably entitle it A Tale of Two Chaldeans. And it would be about Lot and Abraham. Maybe somebody will take that title one day, I don't know. I first met Abraham and Lot when they moved west of where we were in Zoar. They were across the Great Salt Sea and across the Jordan River. And they moved in there and they set up their tent. And everybody knew that Abraham and Lot had come. I mean, they were significant people. They had herds and they had cattle and they had people and they had tents and they had wealth. I mean, when they spread out. Everybody knew that someone had arrived. Well, we were this little town of Zoar. We were small. And so we thought we better make a trip over there and say hello to these people because, we wanted to invite them into the neighborhood. Really, we just wanted to let them know we're peaceable and please don't take us over. And so we made the journey around the Great Salt Sea, and we met Abraham and Lot. And I tell you, they were men. They were significant people. They had, like I said, they were wealthy. They came with herds and flocks and donkeys and camels and servants and people and tents, and it looked like, those two men had a bigger city than Zoar. And more people. And they knew cattle. They knew sheep. They knew animals. Turns out they're from the land of Chaldea. And they had traveled a long way to get where they were. And they knew what they were about. They knew people. They knew how to get things done. This was a top-notch outfit. These guys were significant. And so we were glad that we said hello. We were glad that we wanted to be good neighbors to them because they were worth being good neighbors for. There's something particular about them, though. A little bit odd, maybe. At least I thought it was kind of odd. Because as they invited us into their tent, I looked around and I noticed that there weren't any household idols. And there weren't any amulets. And there weren't any charms anywhere. And I wondered, I couldn't help but wonder. And in my wonderment, I commented on it. And Abraham, he said, no, we serve a different God. A different God? Well, okay, everybody can serve whoever they want, I guess. Okay. I said, but Abraham, you don't have any idols. You don't have any pictures. You don't have any statues. Who is this God? How can you serve a God? And Abraham said, we serve a God we can't see. Well, how in the world do you serve a God that you can't see? We serve gods that we can see, and then we know we're serving them because they're right there. We move them around and we serve them, and But Abraham said, no, 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 we serve the living God. A God who can't be contained in pictures and idols and statues and amulets and charms. A God who is the creator God. That was new to us. A creator God? You mean one God? The same God created trees? The same God created oceans? The same God created animals? The same God created land? The same God created people? He said, yes, the same God. He's a God that cannot be contained, a God that created everything, one God who is alive. And Abraham said he talks to him. And he said, God talked back to him. Who is this God that talks? Who is this God that speaks? Who is this God that you can converse with? I didn't understand it. It was too much for us to take in. But we began thinking about this God. Well, it didn't take long. Maybe a year or two later, we heard that Abraham and Lot went their separate ways, which we kind of figured would happen. I mean, it takes a lot of country to feed all of those animals and all the people. And there just wasn't enough country for both of them. So they went their separate ways. And it was surprising to see Lot and all of his herds go by us. And they went on east of us, and they went to Gomorrah. They went to Sodom, that land of Sodom and Gomorrah, and they pitched their tents there. It was beautiful land, I got to tell you. I wasn't surprised because they went to Sodom. I was surprised because it was Lot who was doing it. I mean, the best land was clearly around that Jordan Valley. You go around that great salt sea, and it opens up into lush, lush land. And that's where Sodom was. And I was surprised because, Lot was Abraham's nephew. And normally, the patriarch takes the best stuff. I figured Abraham would be the one moving over here, but it was Lot. I talked to Abraham about it, and I said, well, why did you do that, Abraham? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, why would you let Lot choose? I mean, obviously, he's going to choose the best, wouldn't you? I mean, yeah, you get to, you know what it's like. Here, you choose, and one's clearly better than the other. Well, you're going to go, sorry, pal, but I'll take the good stuff. And Abraham said, well, that's just what God wanted me to do. What do you mean that's what God wanted you to do? Well, God told me to let Lot choose first, and whatever Lot doesn't choose, all the rest will be mine. Really? And Abraham said, isn't it better? God can give me way more than I ever choose. I would choose a little parcel, and God would say, that's it. I was going to give you a big parcel. And so Lot chose, and he chose his little parcel, and God gave me the big parcel. I thought, okay, maybe he's got something there. I talked to Lot about it after, and Lot was pretty happy too. Lot said, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy. Abraham said, go ahead, choose. And I thought, this never happens. What's wrong? And man, Lot was pretty happy that God was Abraham's God because Lot benefited from it, which I thought was a little strange. Lot seemed kind of happy that Abraham's God told him to let Lot choose first. Well, anyway, Lot traded his goods and sold his sheep and his camels and whatnot in the land of Sodom and Gomorrah, and he got connected there socially, and we kept going and trading with Abraham. There was just, nobody wanted to go to Sodom, okay? I mean, let me just say it. It was a wicked, wicked place. And it wasn't long that the kings from the north, from around the Damascus, Syria area, they decided they would come and they would raid Sodom and Gomorrah on that whole plain. And they came down, and there were 5 of those kings, and they all came down, and they won. They looted everything. They took all of the people from Sodom and all the people from Gomorrah, and they took them away with all of the camels and all of the donkeys and all the sheep and all the goats and everything. They took everything, all the riches, and they took them. And that included Lot. and his wife and his 2 young daughters. Well, and that included us too. The land of Zoar was in that area, and we were taken captive too. Thankfully, somebody somehow escaped and went and told Abraham. Now, you need to know, Abraham was powerful. Let me tell you how powerful Abraham was. Abraham had 318 trained soldiers. 318 trained soldiers. That might not sound like a lot to you, but in our time, that was a huge army. Who has 318 trained soldiers just ready to fight? Abraham did. And so Abraham talked to his God, and his God said, yep, go and rescue Lot. And so Abraham came and he rescued us. Abraham came with his soldiers and some other men, and they overtook these other kings, and they took back everything that those kings took from us. They chased them all the way up to Damascus, which really wasn't a problem for Abraham because, Abraham came from the Damascus area. He knew where he was going. It wasn't a mystery to him. And so he captured those kings and he took back all of the plunder. Everything that had been taken from Sodom, everything that had been taken from Zoar, everything that had been taken from Gomorrah, and all the stuff that those kings from Damascus brought with them. That was enough to make one man incredibly rich. I mean, that would have made a man a king himself. Well, Abraham already was a king of sorts. I mean, nobody called him King Abraham, but I mean, he had one of the biggest armies around. And the king of Sodom came to Abraham. And it was really a curious thing. I had never seen the king of Sodom give anybody honor and respect and bow down to them before. Never seen it happen before. The king of Sodom was a pretty arrogant man. And he bowed down and paid respect to Abraham. And he did that he offered Abraham all of the plunder. He said, Abraham, you can take all of the plunder. Everything that the kings of Damascus brought down, it's yours. You can have it. You know what Abraham did? It made me shake my head. I don't know who we were really learning about this Abraham guy. But Abraham rejected that. Abraham said to the king of Sodom, he said, I have raised my hand to the Lord Most High, and I have taken an oath that I will not take any of the riches or plunder that has been gotten from those kings. And then he said, I will not do it because I don't want you to ever say you have made Abraham rich. I don't know that you understand the significance of that. Because here's what was going on. The king of Sodom, by offering Abraham all of the plunder, which was kind of strange anyway. I mean, what was he going to do? Take it for himself if Abraham wanted it? Abraham just freed him, and he had the bigger army. But the king of Sodom was really saying, Abraham, let's make a deal. Let's enter into an agreement together. Let's make a covenant together. I've got your back, you've got my back. Let's be partners. Let's control this area together. Why don't we join forces, join ourselves together, and we can be one? That's really what the significance of that was. And so the significance of Abraham rejecting that. Abraham really was saying, no, I don't want to be partnered with you, king of Sodom. I don't want to have anything to do with you and your people, king of Sodom. I'm not going to watch your back. You're not going to watch my back. The only reason Abraham came was to get his nephew Lot back, not to help the Sodomites. Abraham was really dishonoring the king of Sodom. And in our culture, that was huge. Our culture is built on honor. It's an honor culture. To dishonor somebody is worse than death in some ways. I mean, if you dishonor me, I've got to take action to get rid of you, to get rid of the shame and dishonor. Abraham really turned his back on the king of Sodom and said, "We have nothing in common, and I will not be joined with you, and I don't ever want you to think that you and I are the same." Because Abraham's God was different. Abraham lived differently. Abraham had a different set of morals and code that he lived by, and he didn't want to be associated with the Sodomites. Which really made it strange when Lot, the nephew of Abraham, went back with the king of Sodom. And not only did he go back with the king of Sodom, but he lived in Sodom. He didn't pitch his tent outside. He got himself a house in Sodom. And Lot became a pretty powerful man in Sodom. He was an important guy. And I wondered, how could he do that? I knew that he believed in the same God as Abraham. I knew that he worshiped the same God as Abraham, but why would Lot go back there? Everybody knew how wicked the Sodomites were. Everybody knew. When you said Sodom, everybody said wicked. They had no rights and no wrongs. It just was. You did whatever you wanted to do. They were skilled at making up evil. Just when you thought you had heard it all, they come up with different stuff. They come up with news. They come up with uglier stuff. Now, I got to tell you, I'm not a perfect guy. I don't worship Abraham's God. I don't have the same moral code as Abraham. I've done a lot of bad stuff. But even I knew that Sodom was not a place you wanted to live and join with. It seemed like their motto was, if it feels right, do it. I hope nobody ever adopts that motto. So I couldn't figure out why Lot wouldn't go back with Abraham. I couldn't figure out why Lot wouldn't just go somewhere else. Was there something in the heart of Lot that wanted more than just God? Was there something in Lot's heart that sought something other than God? I was confused. Because there was a difference between him and Abraham. But they had the same God. Well, we continued to conduct our business with Abraham, and Lot continued his life in Sodom. His daughters grew up and they were engaged. There were a couple of men in Sodom that were willing to marry women, willing to marry. You got to understand that statement. The Sodomites were just so wicked that the men in Sodom didn't care about sexual relations with women anymore. They wanted sexual relationships with men. That's what they sought. It was, well, we don't even need to go there. But that's where Lot lived. I was visiting Abraham one time. And as I was visiting, we were bargaining and trading, and I needed some cheese. Oh, man, he made the best goat cheese. I tell you, you just cut that up and put that on a little slice of lamb and a thick slice of... Well, anyway, you got to try it someday. And as I was there visiting, these other visitors came to Abraham. And they were talking, and they made a covenant with Abraham, and I overheard a little bit of their conversation. And they told Abraham that they had come because they wanted him to know that God was going to destroy Sodom. God was going to destroy Gomorrah. God was going to destroy that whole area with sulfur, burning sulfur from heaven. And Abraham said, whoa, wait. My nephew lives there. What if there's 50 righteous people? If there are 50 people who do the right thing, would you destroy Sodom? Would you spare it? And they said, okay, if there's 50. What about 45? Okay, 45, we'll spare it. And Abraham kept bargaining. 40? Okay. 30? 25? 20? 10? If there's 10 righteous people, would you spare Sodom? And these men said, yes. If there's 10, we'll spare them. Well, you know how it ends. I started out by telling you that Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because there were not even 10 people who were morally upright and did what was right in the whole country. Not even 10. Only Lot was right before God. When Lot showed up at my place, he told me what happened. He told me that these two men came to Sodom in the early evening. And Lot was sitting in the square, the public square, as he often did. And these men came, and right away Lot knew that these men would be in trouble. And so he said, you got to stay at my house. And the men said, no, we'll just stay. We'll camp out here in the public square. Lot pleaded with them and said, no, you've got to come to my house, because Lot knew what was going to happen. He knew that the rest of the men from town would want to come and abuse them and kill them after they were done with them. And so these two men came and stayed at Lot's house. Lot was hoping that nobody noticed that these two men came, that maybe he got them away in time, but sure enough, this mob came in front of Lot's house. And it was a mob of men. And they yelled and they said, give us those two men so we can have sexual relations with them all night. They were going to be passed around. And Lot said, no, don't do this wicked thing. Go home, don't do it. But they demanded more and more, and Lot tried to stay his ground. And more they demanded and pressed on Lot. And they said, Lot, who are you? You're a foreigner. Get out of here. We'll do to you what we're going to do to them. And Lot said, well, I have 2 virgin daughters. I'll give them to you instead. I don't know what to think about that. I'm sure you don't know what to think about that. You need to know that in our culture, to have people in your house meant that it was part of your honor to protect them, to provide for them, and send them on their way better than when they came. It was a matter of honor. And if you did not do that, shame came upon your household. So maybe Lot was acting out of honor, but it seemed to me he was kind of honorable to protect your children too. So I really don't know why Lot did that. I don't understand it. But here's what happened. They, of course, rejected his daughters because they didn't want women, they wanted men. And they were moving themselves towards the door. They were just going to knock the door down and go in. The 2 men inside, turns out they were angels. And they grabbed Lot and they pulled him in and they slammed the door shut and they struck every one of them with blindness. Every one of those men could not see. And they were in confusion. And they were running into each other, and they didn't know what to do, and they were crying out and screaming, and they were blind, and they couldn't see anything, and they had no idea where the door of the house was anymore. And the whole town was in confusion because they were blinded. And the whole time the angels were talking to Lot and saying, you need to leave. You and your household need to leave because we're destroying this city, and we're not waiting any longer. And so Lot went to his 2 son-in-laws and said, hey, we've got to go. And you know his 2 son-in-laws, they laughed at him. They thought he was joking. Like, come on, Lot, whatever. We're going to finish our beer, get out of here. And so Lot came back, and it was just he, his wife, and his 2 daughters. And Lot told me, he said he didn't even really believe it. He really didn't even want to leave himself. He said if it weren't for the fact that the angels grabbed their hands and pulled them out of the town, they probably still would have been there. But the angels grabbed their hands and said, we got to go. We are saving you because of your uncle Abraham. And so they pulled them out of town and they told them, go. Go to the mountains, don't look back. Don't wish you were back here. Don't turn around. Don't long for this place. Don't turn around at all. And Lot said, I can't go to the mountains. Can I go to Zoar? And they said, yes, go to Zoar. And so they came to my town. They came to me. Only Lot and his 2 daughters. Because his wife apparently turned around. I don't know why she turned around. Maybe she wanted one last glimpse of her house. Maybe she wondered what she was going to miss. Maybe she wished she could go back. Maybe she didn't believe it was going to happen. I don't know. But she looked back and she turned into a pillar of salt. You can imagine Lot and his daughters were pretty broken people when they came to me. I mean, Lot had lost everything. His herds, his cattle, his wealth, his honor, his wife. He had lost them all. He had nothing. And his daughters had nothing. He didn't stay very long. They didn't want to stay around Zoar. He was a very fearful man. He was a very broken man. He was a very guilty man, a very shamed man. And he lived the rest of his life in a cave in the mountains. It saddened me to see him that way. Lot, who I first met, was a great man, a powerful man, a wealthy man, even a godly man. And how far he had fallen from that. How far he had come from where he was. I don't know why. I'm not very good with those kind of things. I'm just a guy from a small town called Zoar. But could it be maybe that Lot's heart was taken from God, taken away from God by his desire for riches, or his desire for power, or his desire for position? Or could it be that Lot's heart was divided? Could it be that maybe Lot's heart wasn't fully devoted to God? And so he was pulled away from his relationship with God. I don't know. I just look at the difference between him and Abraham. And Abraham made a clear stand and said, I will not have anything to do with wickedness. I will not have anything to do with evil. I will not have anything to do with Sodom. And he made a stand for who he was and who God was in his life. I never really saw that with Lot. In fact, I saw the opposite. I saw Lot saying, well, maybe I can have God and maybe I can make God just a little smaller and this a little bigger. I don't know for sure. But I know something happened to his heart. I know his heart wasn't where Abraham's heart was. So let me ask you a question. Where's your heart? Where is your heart? Who has your heart? God? Something else? Someone else? Are you fully committed to God? Is he first in your life? Or is he kind of second or third or somewhere down the list? See, if I've learned anything from this, I know that Abraham, who followed God, who followed hard after God, experienced all the blessings that God wanted to give him. Because he followed hard after God, God gave him everything that he planned on giving Abraham. But Lot missed out. Lot didn't follow hard after God. And he didn't receive what God really wanted to give him. So where's your heart? Do you want the best that God can give you? He requires your heart and all of it. Let me pray. God, I ask that you would help us to take a look at our heart, to take an honest look, that Holy Spirit, you would shine your light upon our heart, and you would shine it in those dark corners that we never want to look in and don't want others to. And I pray that you would lead us and teach us to be fully devoted followers of you. Help us to follow hard after you, Jesus. Because we know that you have amazing things for us, and you want to pour them out into our lives. But you're prevented from doing that until we give you our heart and all of it. So Jesus, I pray that you would lead us to the point where we will give you our whole heart, undivided, all yours, no matter what. So Jesus, lead us to do that tonight. Just take a minute or two on your own and just talk to God about that, would you? God, help us to follow hard after you. To plant our flag and say, our heart is yours and it belongs to you, God. And we will follow you. Teach us to do that. Give us the faith to do that. In your name I ask, Jesus. Amen.